Well, hello and welcome to the Unlocking Workplace Wellbeing podcast for HR managers and employers, where we talk about workplace wellbeing to make everyone's lives better. That includes yours and mine. My name's Stephen Pink and I'm the CEO of Verve Healthcare. I'm delighted that my guest in this episode is psychotherapist and corporate coach, Iulia Popescu. Iulia, welcome.
Hello, Stephen. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm really pleased to be here with you today.
And we're absolutely delighted you could join us. I know you've got like a decade of experience in corporate life, working with leaders at lots of different levels, experiencing stress and burnout.
Over the past decade, one thing that I've seen and again is how many leaders and how many managers sometimes are under constant pressure to perform, but they are rarely given the space to truly recover. And that usually happens when boundaries get blurred, when emotional support is minimal, and often the culture is quiet and rewards people for pushing past their limits. It doesn't always look like a crisis. It's usually getting into quite slowly, but over time, that kind of constant stretch without pausing, without having a break, can leave even the most capable people feeling burnout, feeling disconnected, and unsure how to take a break, how to stop, or when to stop.
And so in your experience as a psychotherapist, you've helped people who've experienced trauma, leadership development specialist. You've worked with people who focus on burnout and stress. Are they similar or are they different?
Trauma and burnout share some important overlaps. They affect the nervous system and the person's capacity to function under stress. Both trauma and burnout can lead to symptoms like emotional exhaustion, detachment, and some difficulties concentrating. From a psychotherapeutic lens, trauma often stems from overwhelming experiences that will exceed someone's ability to cope, while burnout is a difference, especially in leadership roles, is typically the result of chronic workplace stress, and that hasn't been successfully managed. When we have both conditions, both conditions can dysregulate the stress response system. And there is so much research in neuroscience and psychology, including the work of Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote an amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score. And he shows that prolonged stress, and we're including here burnout as well, can also mirror some of the emotional and the physiological impacts of trauma. And in leadership development, recognizing these overlaps, these criteria will help us to support, but not just from a performance perspective, but also from a long-term resilience and, of course, well-being. And we are aiming in time to create a space for emotional regulation, for self-awareness, and of course to integrate some good practices, some sustainable practices.
So thinking about practice, and you were saying about there's some sort of signs, you can see signs of it. In the corporate world, your background is in finance, and I know you'll have seen a lot of different dynamics in different teams, some helpful, some less helpful. We've probably all been through that, or at least experienced it in other people. How can we spot and address the kind of negative situations and stop them from getting out of hand? And what can we do?
As a psychotherapist, I understand that behind every team issues, like I would think of, missed deadlines, disengagement, tension in the team, there's often something deeper like unmet needs, unclear boundaries, or unspoken emotional struggles. And I think for managers and HR leaders, one of the most powerful things that we can do is to learn to spot these early signals. The person, for example, who stops speaking in meetings, they are changing their tone in meetings, or all of a sudden the team is suddenly working in silence. And these aren't just performance issues. They're often signs of emotional struggles or disconnection, and addressing them doesn't mean playing the therapist as a HR manager or as a manager. It means you're trying to create a culture, a mindset where everyone feels safe to express their concerns, where feedback isn't feared by people, and where we can have emotional being as part of how we define success at the team level, but also personal success. And from what I've seen, and I'm merging my two careers now, from what I've seen as a corporate person and what I'm seeing now as a psychotherapist, when teams feel seen and supported, not just managed, they will perform better in time. They will collaborate better between themselves. And in time, they will become more resilient under pressure. And I think this is how we prevent problems from evolving, and how we build those workplaces that are both productive and they feel truly human.
So if, I mean, we were talking there about, HR managers, but, I'm a CEO of a small company, and I would like people in our organization to feel, as you said, kind of safe and able to be what they are. What can I do? I mean, I'm not an expert, but what can I do as a leader, someone who kind of sets the tone in the organization? What can I do to help set kind of a helpful tone in this context?
If we're talking about burnout and trying to do something to sort it out, burnout, for example, rarely shows up at once. It's usually, it appears quietly, and it's often having like a mask of dedication. And I think in time, what we can do is to prevent and to detect, pay attention, and to develop our self-awareness when it comes to that. And another important thing as a leader, when it comes to your organization or your team, is to model some of the healthy behaviors, how you perceive stress, how the company deals with resting, relaxation outside working hours. So in a nutshell, I think looking deep down and see exactly what you can adjust within yourself, so those behaviors can be modeled by the entire team.
I guess me talking about it and it kind of being an okay subject of conversation, I suppose as a CEO helps to create that safe environment you were talking about. I mean, you said that burnout can creep up quite, quietly, emerges quietly. Obviously respecting, anonymity or confidentiality. Can you talk us through an example of where it occurred and what happened?
I worked with someone, let's call him, it's a him, let's call him Brad.
Okay,
And
Brad.
he was always known for being busy. And being busy was always a result of always saying yes to more tasks, doing more reports, doing more extra meetings, last minute requests. And he took them all without any hesitation. And he also had like a pride on himself about being reliable and helpful. But underneath, he was running on empty. And because every yes that he carried with him, it was like a silent resentment. He was always tired, emotionally drained, and easily losing the sense of self. He wasn't lazy or disorganized. He never learned that his own needs mattered. And I think many high performers, they believe that rest is something to be earned, not something essential. So how I've approached this particular situation, we reframed the narrative. And I talk a lot about burnout also in my practice. And burnout isn't proof of dedication. It's mostly a proof of imbalance. And when we talk about burnout, we need to talk about rest. Rest isn't a reward. It's more like a requirement for high performance. So working with him, we practiced boundaries, like learning how to say, I can't right now, but I can help tomorrow. Building an awareness when it comes to rest guilt and to be able to rest without feeling guilty. And also we set some clear, I know everyone talks about boundaries and shutdown times, but they are so important. And the moment we implement boundaries, we implement them, but we need to make sure that we also keep them, we maintain them. So integrating and maintaining those boundaries was a successful outcome for the person with whom I've worked.
I guess as a leader then, for us, it's important to have our own boundaries and let people see that we've got them and see that we're sticking to them, because I guess people will tend to emulate the boss or think that's what's required. So I guess if they see the boss kind of working all the hours under the sun, they're going to think that's expected of them as well, even no matter what's said. If that's what it looks like, people will tend to try and follow that behavior. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, modeling behavior, and also redefining productivity, and adding in the productivity aspect also the recovery part as part of performance. So modeling healthy behaviors, redefining productivity, and also encouraging people to say no. I know it's difficult, but that will encourage honest conversations around the workloads, around how many tasks they have. And it's important for people to have that courage to say, I can't do it right now. I'm going to find a solution tomorrow, next week, or I need some help from my wider team.
It's interesting, actually, thinking about that in my own experience when I've struggled to say no to people. You want to keep the boss happy or keep the board happy, whatever it is. When you do actually finally say no, and obviously you say it in a professional way, it's amazing that most of the time people just accept it and say, okay, fine, that'll be great. Or they help you find alternative solutions. Once you kind of jump in the water, it's quite warm. It's not as scary and not as cold.
Yeah, and I think as this comes a little bit from our childhood, because there are like some emotional patterns we think that we need to obey. And I've read somewhere, I'm not 100% sure about the accuracy of the information that I've read, but I've read somewhere that we tend to reinitiate or to repeat the family dynamics that we had at home, and we try to implement them at work. So saying no, it might come from an inner child position. When we want to say yes, we want to please our parents / translate in the corporate environment. We want to please our managers, please our teams. So it's an interesting concept, learning how to say no, because you learn how to say no and you learn how to say yes for you in a way.
So, I mean, we offer mental health services in workplaces for different customers in Verve. And one of the things that I often wonder is how much of the scenario, how much of the problem, if you like, or the issue is down to the individual and how much is the situation?
I'm so glad that your company is offering access to mental health support, because as I mentioned previously, prevention. I've worked also in fraud and outside finance. And one of the main things in fraud were prevention and detection. And I think with mental health is the same. Prevention is the first approach when it comes to mental health. But also your question, I think it touches something a little bit deeper. Is it the individual or is it the system? And I think the honest answer is both. And as a therapist and also as a coach, and also having the experience in the corporate world, I've seen how we tend to internalize stress. And we think that stress is a personal failure, when in fact, many professionals, especially managers, are being asked to lead in environments that are not necessarily sustainable. And I think post-COVID, some of the realities have changed, and because of constant change, because of blurred boundaries, because of high targets, that might have left even the most capable employees depleted.
So you mentioned the kind of post-COVID thing, and I've been struck by some of the Gallup work and the studies they've done, looking at how managers themselves are working in almost impossible situations with so many demands, deadlines, and all the rest of it. And engagement at a manager level seems to be going through the floor because it's tough. I mean, are you seeing that in your work?
Yeah, and I was listening the other day in another interesting podcast, and they were talking about the Gallup's data as well, like you mentioned. And I think that also confirms what many of employees are quietly living. And I think it's not necessarily that the engagement is down. It's people being overwhelmed, but not underperforming. And what I see in my practice, what I see in my work is that what I hear, sometimes managers often they carry not just their own pressure, but the emotional weight of the entire team. And them not having the space to process that, that's when burnout kicks in. And burnout might become the norm. And I think there's also, I'm quite optimistic as a person at the base. And I think there are some good news. The fact that this doesn't have to be this way. And I think people need to hear that they're not alone. Like you said, your company offers amazing services. I know corporate offers also mentors, peer support. So having that ability and the openness to accept talking about it, to accept adding another person when it comes to dealing with your struggles.
So yeah, that's great. Thinking about kind of HR managers and employers who watch and listen to this podcast, what specific insight would you like them to take away? What do you want their takeaways to be?
What I hope HR managers and employees and employers can take away is that well-being isn't a bonus. It's like a foundation, and supporting it doesn't mean that we are fixing people. It means that we are creating some healthy conditions where people don't have to break in the first place. And because committed leaders, they're trying to support others while silently they are running on empty themselves. And I've seen that word again as an observer, because I was quite lucky not to be affected or impacted by it. And now as a psychotherapist and a coach, I see how deeply the system will shape and develop the individual. And I think if HR managers, leaders, if they're noticing more stress, disengagement, or burnout in their teams, is to realize that it's not because people are weak, it's because they're human and the pressure is actually real. And there are also always, there are always solutions where we can create a team, a workplace where boundaries, again, are respected, where boundaries are maintained, where rest is valued, and managers feel resourced, not only responsible. And I know I'm talking like it's a fantasy, but it's not a fantasy. This is what we can build together as humans. So for anyone who's listening, if this speaks to what you are seeing or to what you're feeling, don't forget that you're not alone.
So really, I mean, that's brilliant. What you're saying is, I love that thing you say, having boundaries, building rest and recovery time in, not thinking burnout is the thing to go for. It's not a luxury. It's not an optional extra. That's just good business. And actually, we should all think like that.
Yeah, it's a good business case.
Absolutely. There's it's part of the sustainability of the organization. And before we finish, it's been a great conversation, but before we finish, any sort of final thoughts you want to leave with anyone before we go?
I have a quote in my mind now. I don't know exactly who said it, so I can't quote the author, but it sticks to me for a while. It says that, so when we take care of the people who take care of the other people, everyone thrives. So that would be my final message. Take care of the people, look after other people.
Okay, we'll make sure we try and do that, and hopefully our listeners and viewers will do that as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting, and thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for the invite, and it was lovely discussing all these matters with you.
Thank you. Well, thanks very much for being part of the Unlocking Workplace Wellbeing podcast from Verve Healthcare. If you want to improve well-being in your workplace through access to mental health support, physiotherapy, private GP, and health assessments, then we've got a solution for you. Just visit us at vervehealthcare.co.uk and please be sure to subscribe. Many thanks.